Hey everybody, can you hear me? Need to do a little check-in. I got got a new camera and a new microphone, and I just want to make sure everything's working. So if you can see me and you can hear me and stuff, let me know, please. All right, great. Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me know. So hopefully this will work better now. Hopefully this camera is better quality than the other one I had. So far, it isn't focusing every 10 seconds, so that's good. Can you play Tornado of Souls? I've actually never tried. All right, so if you were here last week, then you know that I talked about that tonight I would be starting a series on scales. And so I'm sure most of you probably already know the pentatonic scale, and we already did something kind of with the pentatonic scales a few weeks back. So not that we're just going to skip that altogether, but we're going to, kind of move on to something, some new ground, sort of. So we're going to be looking at diatonic scales. So the 7 major modes. So we had been working with, we did a little bit of stuff with some like music theory, and we used the major scale to go through that. So that's where we're going to start with. So I'm going to be doing this in the key of G major for right now, anyway, because it's just kind of a good neutral place to play. So the major scale, or the Ionian mode, has 7 tones in it. So all of the major scales, diatonic scales, have seven notes in it. So in the key of G, we have G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and then we're back to G. So one of the things that's really cool about a fretted instrument is that no matter what key you're in, it's always the same pattern. So you just learn this one pattern, and regardless if you're playing in G or you're playing in B flat or in F or whatever, it's always the same pattern. So the first thing here, let's just go over this pattern. Now, there are more than one way to play this. There's, different ways that you could do. Like we could do like that. But the way I like to do it, and the way that I'm going to show you how to do it, is it's going to be all 3 notes per string. And the reason is because if you do them 3 notes per string, then all the patterns will hook together across your fretboard very easily. And I'll show you how to do that. It's actually a really simple thing. So there'll be 7 patterns that you memorize the sequence, and I'll show you how to hook them together. And then you'll be able to play anywhere on the neck you want, in any key you want, just by knowing those patterns. So the first one here, we're going to do, like I said, is the major scale, or the Ionian mode. So we're gonna do this in the key of G. So I'm starting here on the 3rd fret of my low E string. We have 2 whole steps, so we're 3, 5, and 7. Now, one of the first things here I want to address is that when you see when I'm playing this, I'm using my 1st, my 2nd, and then my 4th finger. Some people like to do it this way, where they have they use their 1st, their 3rd, and then their 4th finger. That is incredibly uncomfortable for me to do it that way. I've kind of noticed that most of the players that I see that play that way are the ones that have, they were lucky enough to be born with, big hands, long fingers, long, like, oh, hello from Russia. Oh, awesome. Yeah. And my train of thought just derailed. Oh, yeah. So like players like I've noticed like Paul Gilbert when he plays that he likes to make the stretch like that. And I believe Steve Vai does that way too. Either way you want to do it is fine. But the one thing that's important is if you have not, like if this is totally new to you, you've never done this before, you need to make a decision of which way you're going to do it. So I'm going to teach you the pattern, and then just like, when you're practicing, you can just mess around with it both ways. And more than likely, one way is going to feel real natural and the other way is going to feel real awkward. But the thing is that you do want to make a decision. I've had some of my own private students before that they'll play, like when they ascend it, they do it one way, and then when they descend it, they change to a different finger. That's just not good. Having consistency in your playing, in your technique is key to really being able to play well, because you don't have to think about it as much. You can develop muscle memory. So for me, this is the way to do it. But for you, it might be like that. So either way is fine. So anyway, we've got on the low E, we've got 3, 5, and 7. And again, this would only be if we were in the key of G, because this is a G. So if we were going to do it in A, and we started on the 5th fret here on A, then it would be 5, 7, and 9. All right, so we've got 3, 5, 7. And then we go to our A string, we have the same shape, 3, 5, 7. When we go to our D string, we have to shift up a half step. So we're starting on the 4th fret. Now it's 4, 5, 7. We go to the G string again, 4, 5, 7. Now we go to the B string. We're going to shift up a half step again. Now we're going to go 5, 7, 8. And then on our high E, 5, 7, 8. Now, another thing too is that especially if you're a beginner, you're going to really try to avoid using your pinky. I remember doing that. I don't think I've ever had a student that just was okay with using their pinky at first. I hear, my pinky's too short. My pinky isn't strong enough. It's not coordinated enough. Yada yada yada. None of that is necessarily true. It's just a matter of using it. I mean, besides like, playing guitar or whatever, you don't use your pinky for a whole lot of different things. So it's pretty weak. You just got to strengthen it up and use it. You really don't want to be trying to do this, trying to span all these frets just with your first 3 fingers. Now, if I'm playing above the 12th fret, sometimes I will just use these 3 fingers on certain things just because of the sake of space, because the frets being really close together. But as a general rule, you really want to use your pinky. It's your friend. Okay, so you want to memorize this sequence. And if you were here for the last couple of weeks, you probably already know this because we did go over this pattern. So we're actually going to do 2 patterns today, and I'll explain why. So yeah, you want to memorize this sequence and then practice it ascending and descending. Whoops. Now, I would choose one location to play it in. Like I said, the pattern's the same no matter what. So if you're a beginner or you're more on the smaller side frame-wise, sometimes it's hard to, have that reach. So it might be easier for you to start off maybe starting like on the 8th fret and practicing it there, because that way the frets are a little closer together, but they're not really crammed together, and your arm's in kind of a more natural spot. So if you're really struggling to play it down here, I would suggest, like starting like on the 8th or the 10th fret and working it there. And then when you get where you can do that, start working your way back down, because obviously you want to be able to play in any key anywhere on the fretboard. And you want to alternate pick. So alternate picking, if you don't know what that is you just don't do 2 downstrokes in a row or 2 upstrokes in a row. It's just a continuous down, up, down, up, down, up, no matter what. So if you if alternate picking is just completely new to you, so here I'd be starting with a down, then an up, and then a down, and now I'm going to the next string. Now I just ended with a downstroke, and logic would tell you, oh, well, I'm going in this direction, I should start with another downstroke. Well, that's exactly what I thought way early on. And so I practiced that way all the time. I didn't know what alternate picking was. And that turned out to be a big mistake. So what I've kind of figured out over time is that if you are good at alternate picking and what you're playing, because it isn't like you alternate pick everything. There's going to be plenty of things that isn't just straight alternate picking. If you're good at alternate picking, if you're playing something that should be played a different way, you won't even really have to think about it. Your picking hand it'll just do it. But if you're not good at alternate picking and you're playing something that requires it, it's really, really difficult. And like I said, from personal experience, I practiced a mistake for so long that when somebody finally pointed it out to me and I tried to correct it, it was really, really difficult. And that was, I don't know, probably 30 years ago when somebody pointed out to me that I was not alternate picking. And then when I tried to correct it, like I said, it was really difficult. And even to this day, if I'm playing something if it's new, I don't know it, I'm like trying to sight read it and it's, maybe fast or something, I'll catch myself not alternate picking. So just don't want anybody to fall into that. All right. So it would be down, and up when I'm changing strings. Down, up, and then down on the next change. Up, down. So it's just a continuous. Down, up, down, up, down, up. You don't cross back and forth. Joe Satriani has an excellent exercise video for alternate picking. Yeah, I'm sure he does. There's lots of great tutorials online on YouTube and stuff for alternate picking. The one that I like to use is actually something I got from Paul Gilbert he had an instructional video that I had clear back in high school. And he played it here, but I like to play it here on the 9th fret personally, but it's 9, 10, 12 on the B string, and then 10, 11, 12 on the high E. See? So it's a really great exercise. I think I actually did a video on the Guitar Control channel. If you go to the channel and you just search alternate picking, it'll probably come up. And there's probably more than that one. There's probably tons of them on there. But anyway, yeah, alternate picking is really important. So that's the first thing you want to do. Memorize the sequence and practice it and really focus on that you're alternate picking. Now, as far as speed, first of all, I'm the last person that's going to ever discourage anybody from trying to play fast. I love fast guitar playing. Like, I love Paul Gilbert, Yngwie, those players like that. I think that's totally awesome. And I just think it sounds great. But nothing sounds worse than trying to play faster than you can. So, and I'm guilty of it. Everybody is. So yeah, I'm not going to discourage you from trying to play fast. If playing fast is a goal for you, then, when you get this down, then you're going to want to use your metronome. Practice with your metronome. Just start off slow and, just play through as long as you're playing precise, and then just over time, slowly turn it up. and you'll get that speed. But like I said, it just sound, if it's in control, it sounds great. If it's out of control, it sounds really awful. Well, I've actually lost my picking chops like considerably. Just earlier today, I seen a video of myself from 10 years ago, and I couldn't believe how much faster I was then than I am now. So you want to memorize the pattern, practice it with alternate picking, and then we want to do some stuff to kind of make it more musical. Because when you're playing, if you're using the scale for soloing and you're just ascending and descending the scale, yeah, the notes are in key, but it doesn't really sound all that musical. So there's like a few different things that you can do. Well, there's more than a few, but I'm going to show you a few of things that you can do to help this, to make you better at making it so it's easier for you to make something sound more musical. So one simple one is you play 6 notes. So I'm going to play the 3 notes on the E and the A string. Now I'm going to repeat the notes on the A string and then go to the D string. So you play a group of 6. So that ends up getting you it's another kind of a Paul Gilbert thing that I've heard him do a lot, similar things like that. Now you want to do it backwards, descending as well. Just by doing that already sounds a little bit more musical than just playing the scale ascending and descending. So another one that's an expansion on that I like is I will go play the 6 notes, and then I'll repeat the note. So the thing with this way, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we repeat notes 4, 5, and 6, and add 1, and then descend 2. Just like that. And then do it again, but now you're going to start on the A string. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 6, 5, and then start over again. So across all strings. And then descending. Now, you may have noticed that when I was doing that I ended up playing some of the notes using a different finger than I normally would when I was just playing up and down the scale. So for the most part, anytime I say that you should be doing this with this finger, you should be doing that for that finger, that's all subject to change depending upon what you're doing. If you've had experience with doing like pentatonic licks and stuff, you've probably already seen that there's just times where you end up playing a note that you would normally play with your first finger, and now you're playing it with your second finger, or vice versa, something like that, just for the ease of your hand getting through the sequence. Okay, so the other thing, aside from it making it more musical, this will also it'll help you to be able to just know the pattern better, just know it inside and out. The better you know these, the more you just know these patterns inside and out, the better you'll be able to utilize them in your soloing and your improvising. So another one is I like to do is I just play like here I'm starting on the 3rd fret. So I play the note on the 5th or the low E, and then I play the note on the A string. And then when I move to the next position, I go back to the low E again, and then to the A. So now here, when I go from the A string to the D string, normally that note I'm going to play with my first finger. But since I'm doing this, I'm not gonna do that because I don't want to do this. I hope that makes sense. Whoops. All right, see, I even did some practice with it. I screwed up there. So the same thing with descending. You just go through it the same way. So again, this just makes it more musical. When just playing a scale just straight up and down isn't as musical because all the tones are like close together. So if you like skip over notes, change the sequence around how you're doing it, it just makes it sound, gives it more of a melody. So a thing that you can do as far as adding a melody to it is to actually just play an arpeggio out of the scale. So an arpeggio, for those of you who don't know, is you're just playing the notes of a chord, but you're playing them separately. And if you're in what's called root position, you're playing it in sequence. So like a major, and we talked about this in this theory thing, so I'm not going to get too far into it. If you missed last week's and the weeks before live streams, go back and check those out because I go over all this stuff with about the music theory side of this. But if you play the first, third, and fifth note of the major scale, that's how you make a major chord. So if we're doing that, we go G, skip over the second note, go to the third, which is B, skip over the fourth, go to the fifth, which is D. We get G, B, D, a G major chord. So you can do that inside of the scale. So I'm going to play the first note. I'm going to skip the second note. I'm going to skip the next note, play the next one, skip the next one. So what I've done there is I'm playing 1, 3, 5, and 7. And then the next note after that is 8, and 8 is the same as 1, so I'm back to G, so it would just start over again there. So basically, you just remember that you just skip every other note in the scale. 1, 3, 5, 7. Now we're 8. We're going to skip this note, skip this one, skip this one, skip this one. So what you're doing there is you're outlining the notes that are inside of the chord. So anytime you do that over the top of a chord, it's just going to sound very musical and melodic because you're just outlining the chord. Let's see. I was thinking about this earlier today. I should have wrote some notes down for myself because I knew it would happen as soon as the camera turned on. I'd brain fart. I wouldn't remember what it was. So I may end up kind of skipping around a little bit as I remember something. I might come back and show another exercise or sequence or something like that. Okay, so as far as using this for soloing, this is a G major scale. So if you're playing a song that's in the key of G major, all of those notes are going to work. So like we talked about last week and the week before, a 1, 4, 5 chord progression is the most widely used chord progression. So 1, 4, 5 in the key of G, you have G is 1, 2, 3, 4 is C, and 5 is D. So if you were just like playing over something that was, like that, you're going to be able to solo over it. And it's going to sound really good because it's in that key. Now, it's not just G major that will work with. You can also play the major scale G major over something that's in the key of E minor because, again, you can go back to the theory lessons we did. Every major key has what's called a relative minor key, and every minor key has what's called a relative major key. And it's a really simple thing to figure out. So if you know what the major key is, If you go down a step and a half, that's the minor. So if we start here on G, so it's G major, go down a step and then a half, E. And then the opposite, if you know that the song you're playing over is in the key of E minor, E, up a step and a half, G. So those they contain the same notes is why it works. It's just that when you're playing a E minor scale, you're playing the same 7 notes. You're just starting on E instead of G, and we'll get more into that here shortly. So you could use it, for either one of those. And actually, I really like the way that sounds to play the major scale over the minor chord. I just think that it sounds cool. It's very neoclassical kind of sounding, like Yngwie does stuff like that. Okay, so that's, I know it seems like we kind of rushed through that particular scale, but it's, like I said, it's just because I've probably showed that 20 times in the last 3 weeks through these live streams. So before we move on, does anybody have a question or anything about the Ionian mode or the major scale before I move on? All right, so if nobody has any questions or anything, then I will go ahead and move on. All right, so the other pattern that I want to show you is the second position of the Ionian mode, and this pattern is also what is the Dorian mode. Okay, so before I get into that and show it, this is a subject that there is lots of confusion on. I hear people talk about, read stuff, and there just seems to be a lot of confusion about this particular topic. So the pattern that is the Dorian mode is the same sequence of notes that is the second position of Ionian. So the reason that sometimes you would call it the second position of Ionian versus calling it the Dorian mode is it's all about what you're playing over, what the chord progression is you're playing over. So if we went back and we, that G, C, and D, 1, 4, 5, and G, I can play the Dorian mode over that, and it's the same notes that are in the G Ionian, the G major scale. It's just that I'm starting on the second note. I'm starting on A instead of starting on G, but it's still A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A. It's still the same 7 notes. I'm just starting one note later and ending one note later. Now, if we were playing actually the Dorian mode, and we could still do it, it could still be in G major. I mean, still have those same 7 notes, but the chord progression wouldn't be G, C, and D. It would be A minor or A minor 7, if you remember what we talked about last week with the chord scales that so we could do, if we wanted to say a 1, 4, 5, then it would be, we could do A minor 7, and then we could do D major or D dominant 7, and we could do E minor or E minor 7. So if like the chord progression, say, was like something like that, now I'm in the Dorian mode because the tonal center, the tonic of this, is now A instead of being G. I will continue to talk about this because sometimes this is a subject that it takes a while for it to really make sense. It's not as complicated as everybody thinks it is. It's actually somewhat simple if you just remember some certain just fundamental things. All right, so let's look at this pattern. So continue, I'm going to stay in the key of G. So that means that I'm going to be starting this on A. So I'm going to be starting here on the 5th fret. So we've got 5, 7, 8. And then when we go to the D or the A strings, oh my gosh, the A string, then we have 5, 7, 9. When we go to the D string, 5, 7, 9. The G string, 5, 7, 9. When we go to the B string, it's 7, 8, 10, and the high E, 7, 8, 10. So again, you're going to want to memorize this pattern. Ascending and descending. Alternate picking, you can use those same exercises we did before. You know, so you're descending, you know, so just do all of those exercises that I showed you and stuff. I do is, you know, like after this is over, just go back, watch the video again, you know, write them down, write down the sequences or whatever, because they're really useful. So I said before that like these patterns connect together. So when I play Ionian, I've got 2 whole steps. So this is note number 1, this is note number 2, and this is note number 3 because it's 3 notes per string. So notes 2 and 3 of Ionian are notes 1 and 2 of Dorian. So here I'm on the 3rd, 5th, and 7th fret. Now when I go to Dorian, I'm going to start on the 5th, and I know it's the 7th because that was what the previous one was, and now 8. So if you remember the thing I talked about last week or the week before or whatever, the sequence of a major scale. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. 2 whole steps and a half step, then 3 whole steps and a half step, and then it starts over again. That is music DNA. You want to know that. You want to memorize that because it will make all of this stuff make way more sense, especially if you're doing something where you're not playing through the whole scale and you're connecting them together and you're kind of playing more across the fretboard like this that we'll get into later. It just makes it easier to follow. So here, from here to here is a whole step. From here to here is a whole step. So that means the next note is a half step, which is our C. But when we play Ionian, we play it here, but it's the same note, right? That's how I know that I'm doing this right, is that I'm using notes 1 and 2 or notes 2 and 3 from the previous pattern, and I'm following that sequence, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And it's the same notes. Here, I'm G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. So it's all naturals except 1 sharp, F sharp. But if I start here on A for Dorian, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, I'm playing the same 7 notes. I'm just starting on the 2nd degree. So this pattern is the 2nd degree of Ionian, but it is also the Dorian mode. And like I said, I'll continue to talk about stuff with that to make sure that it's something that that everybody's catching on to and following along with, and it's making sense to them. So does anybody have any questions thus far about this before I move on? All right, so if nobody has any questions, then I will continue. Okay, so you memorize those 2 patterns, you got those exercises and stuff. Now what we want to do is we want to work with being able to not only see these as separate patterns, but being able to chain them together. So it's not just like playing this way across the fretboard, it's also playing this way across the fretboard. Even though the notes end up being the same, if I go versus, it's the same thing, but it will cause you to play differently, because if you're moving this way, you're going to be more maybe using stuff with like slides and things like that, where if you're playing this way, maybe you won't be using slides as much, but you'll be doing more like legato, hammer-ons and pull-offs and things like that. So it's just a different way to do it. And then also sometimes I find that if you play the same sequence and you're always doing it the same way, it can get stale and you don't come up with like new ideas. But just by arranging it in a different way, so you're having to like kind of think outside of the box a little bit as to how to do it, you'll end up coming up with more things. So the first little sequence with this exercise is that you ascend Ionian all the way to the top. So I'm going to start here on G. I'm going to play all the way to the top. Now I want to shift up and descend Dorian. So we already said that notes 2 and 3 are notes 1 and 2 of the next position. So now I'm going to put my first finger here and my second finger here. And then that's going to put my fourth finger here. So now I can descend Dorian. So all together. So it just sounds like I'm playing an extremely long, elongated version of Ionian because I'm just playing those notes. So if I play this, work on it being able to. And that's how you want to practice, is just like that, just repeating it. When you get to where you can do that well, then do it the opposite way. So now I'm going to start with Dorian. I'm going to ascend it to the top. Now I'm going to shift down. So again, these notes 1 and 2 here are actually 2 and 3 of the previous pattern. So that means I'm going to put my fourth finger where my second finger is and my third finger where my first finger is. And that puts my first finger back here because we know that we're not going to go 3 half steps. So if you, by doing that, where you're playing in the key of G, and look how much we went from the 3rd fret all the way to the 10th fret. So we've covered a pretty large area of the fretboard just with knowing these 2 patterns. So after you get where you can do this, going both directions, okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to kick it up a notch a little bit. We want to be able, like I said earlier, you want to know these patterns like the back of your hand. You really want to know them inside and out, so that way you're not like guessing as to where you can go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the first 6 notes of Ionian, and now I'm going to shift up and I'm going to play the first 6 notes of Dorian. Now I'm going to shift back down, starting on the A string, and do the same thing. So we've got the 6 notes between E and A in Ionian, and then E and A in Dorian. Then we're going to shift down, and we're going to do them on A and D in Ionian, and then in Dorian. Shift up, shift down, shift up, down, up. So you end up getting and then descending, of course. not only is that just good for all that, it's just really good workout for your left hand and stuff. Especially if this is new and you haven't really done this, you're gonna get arm pump, like real bad at first, and then just like I've said before, and I will say this over and over and over and over again because I feel it's really important, is listen to your body. If you're doing something and your hand or your arm or whatever is telling you, hey, this hurts, then don't do it. Now, I don't mean like, oh, my tips of my fingers are getting sore, because you haven't got calluses or whatever. That's not what I mean. I mean, that can be bad too. If you've ever, played until you've worn through your calluses, like that Bryan Adams song, played it till my fingers bled. Well, I've never had my fingers bleed, but I have worn actually through my calluses before. So it looked like I'd had, like blisters or, like I'd been burned or something like that. That kind of sucks. That hurts. But I'm just meaning if you're doing it and it's like it's really hurting your hand, or it's making your shoulder hurt or your wrist or whatever, don't overdo it. Don't just sit and keep, play through the pain. Don't do that. That's not that does not work in this situation. So yeah, this is a great exercise. Now, another one you can do too, and this is just something that I kind of started doing fairly recently. I go through these spurts where I want to play pentatonic licks, and then I get kind of burned out. I'm on it, and I don't. And then after a while, I'm like, oh, I want to go back to them again. So I've been trying to just think of ways to kind of take the idea of pentatonic licks, but do it with diatonic scales. I already showed you guys that thing, a couple of weeks ago, where I just added the extra note into the pentatonic scale to make it 3 notes per string, but it wasn't like a genuine pentatonic, just tons of passing tones. So since when the pentatonic scale, you're just playing 2 notes per string, what you can do with this is play 2 notes per string. So I play the first and second note, but not the third note. And then I do the same thing on the next string. It sounds weird because it's like that's like a pentatonic, that lick. It's that, but with the pentatonic or with the major scale. And then you can move up to the second part and do the same thing. So you've got, I'm going to skip all of the notes that I would normally play with my first finger. So that's, then we could go up and do it with the last, or any of those combinations like that. It again will just make it so the pattern better, and it just kind of give you some ideas because it just kind of sounds good. So you want to do that with you can do it with Ionian, you can do it with Dorian, because that's all we're working with right now. And then anything if you can think of on your own. I mean, like I said, this particular thing, it never even occurred to me to do that until, I don't know, in the last year, give or take. So we could do that and go into Dorian too. So we end up going across through both patterns in groups of 2. Dividing up the scales into groupings numerical groupings is actually a good way just to create licks, especially licks that are like long continuous runs like that, So I'm so that was like what I was doing before. I was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then starting 4, 5, 6, doing 6 notes per pairs of strings. So if you take just any numerical value, just kind of a thing that I used to kind of screw around with and stuff with students, one is with dice. You know, roll a die, a 6-sided die, and it'll give you a number. And as long as it's not just one, you're good. If you can roll a 1, you got to do it again. Roll a 5 and then do it as a grouping of 5, or you roll a 4, you do it as a grouping of 4. So then what you could do is roll twice. So maybe the first time you roll a 5, and then the second time you roll a 3. So then what you do is you would ascend 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then down 3. 1, 2, 3. Anything like that, it's just going to give you that. It's going to break it up, make it sound a little bit more musical, and help you to really just get it down, and help get the finger independence and strength, the equalization between all of your fingers. So that's 2 of the 7, and we will continue that. This is just part 1. We'll continue with this next week. We'll just keep moving on with it. And if I end up thinking of things that I meant to show you tonight, or other things and stuff, next time I promise I'll take some notes, so when I get here I don't go, what was I going to say? Now, aside from just alternate picking it, you could also work with it. It's a good way to practice doing stuff with legato. So if I pick and then hammer, so each string I pick once and hammer twice. Easy way to get like a fast, whoa, that was terrible. Easy way to get like a fast ascending or descending run in there. All right, so that kind of covers it for what I wanted to do with this tonight. But now I want to take a few minutes. If anybody has any questions about any of this, or if they have some other guitar-related question that they'd like to see if I could answer, I could keep talking about. At the end of all of these, we're going to do, try to stump the dummy here. Just let's see. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say, see if you can get a question that I can't answer, because I'm sure there's plenty of questions I can't answer. I'm a student of the guitar for life. I mean, I don't know it all, and I probably could live to be 500 and still wouldn't know it all. I try to learn something new every day. So, but this is just kind of fun, to do that, to do the questions. So lay them on me. If you have any questions, lay them on me. Let's see if we can, stump the dummy. What's funny is that for the last few weeks, we haven't been talking about scales, and every question that came in was about scales, and now we're working with scales, and nobody has any questions about scales. Come on, nobody's got any questions? That's what I'm here for. I'm here to try to help you. And if you have any questions, don't be shy. Lay them on me. Let's try to stump the dummy. All right, well, if nobody has any questions or anything, then I'm going to be wrapping this up. But I hope that you got something from this, and that hopefully that you learned something. Even if you already know these patterns and you've been doing this stuff for a while, hopefully that maybe some of these exercises, something that you don't know, or maybe it'll inspire you to do something new. I hope that this is all a positive and does something good for you. All right. Well, if nobody has any any questions, and I guess I'm going to wrap this up. I appreciate everybody that was here and watching and commenting and stuff. That this really, helps me to be able to keep a job. So I appreciate it. And I will be back here again, same time. This will, as of now, but things are subject to change. I should be here as a general rule every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. For about an hour. So I hope you come back next week. Hope you enjoyed this, and appreciate everybody that was here. Thanks for watching, and have a great night, everyone. Thanks.